At the time, we were looking for a name. We were still looking to the likes of the sort of Lou Reed and Iggy Pops and sort of people like that. And there was albums out at the time. Iggy had done The Idiot and so on. And I had just liked that kind of naivety. At this time, all the bands seemed to have a sort of a manifesto before they'd even made a record. The Clash and the Pistols and the pop group, and we just wanted to try and get on with the music first and finally come to whatever manifesto, which I think we probably have 10 years on. Earlier, David Bowie had written a song called Gene Genie, and there was a line in that, he's so simple-minded he can't find his whatever it was. And if it came from anywhere, the name of the band came from that.
Bruce Findlay signed Simple Minds to Zoom Records, and in early '79 they recorded their first album, Life in a Day. The reviews were mixed, but Tony Stewart, then writing for NME, saw the band's potential.
I remember really badgering the album's review editor, which was Angus McKinnon, who went on to Time Out later, to let me write this review. And he agreed to let me write it. And you have these weeks in the music press which are quieter weeks than others. And to be honest, you're struggling looking for lead reviews. And it just happened, I suppose for Simple Minds' good fortune, that was a quiet week, and that's why it got so much space. I thought the cover was really crappy though. Some bloody lake or something, wasn't it? When I first met them, but it wasn't in a sort of a stage situation, it was at the recording studio. And the first time I saw them, I think they wore makeup on stage, and it was particularly, it wasn't strange to see it, but one thing that was strange was that it evoked memories of Genesis. And I remember when I interviewed them, I talked to them about Genesis, because Genesis seemed to be an influence. And one thing that was quite remarkable about the interview that I did with them was that it was kind of not long after punk, and people's attitudes had been changed a great deal by punk, and bands coming along had to be modern, and that is deliberately emphasised as modern. You know, they couldn't admit to liking any English music or sort of so-called dinosaur music. And there were these Scots guys, like really wet behind the ears, admitting to liking Genesis. And then when I went to see them in Birmingham, I remember going backstage, and they didn't particularly have a lot of makeup on, but I remember Jim's mascara had run, and he kind of always seemed to me to be a cross between a sort of rather modest Peter Gabriel and a guy from the 60s called Dave Berry, who did The Crying Game because of the gestures on stage. But I don't think it wasn't outrageous. It was a bit weird to see it, because that kind of thing was a bit, you know, it wasn't the thing to do at the time. But obviously they really wanted to be a goth band, and they were the precursors of goth.
Zoom's parent label, Arista, saw Simple Minds in a different light. They were convinced they had a hit song on their hands, Chelsea Girl.
Chelsea Girl was recorded at Abbey Road. We were mixing the LP. We had attempts at it. We attempted doing Chelsea Girl with the mobile in the farm, and it just didn't have the power or the consistency. It wasn't really consistent. And we did it at Abbey Road in one afternoon, Chelsea Girl. Which is, and the guitar solo in Chelsea Girl is wonderful. We kept saying, you know, oh, if that's Life in a Day, what's Chelsea Girl going to do? It's going to go straight to #1. And it didn't.
Chelsea Girl failed to reach the top 40, and Jim Kerr quickly became disenchanted with the album Life in a Day.
I still think that perhaps we got to record those records earlier than we should have. I don't know how you get experience without actually doing it, but I would love to have been a wee bit more experienced. But I remember going to Abbey Road, and Derek Forbes, who was, out of all of us, he was always the biggest sort of pop star and the one who would always blow his horn in a great way. But he was going through his phone book, endlessly phoning up people saying I'm actually playing the harpsichord that they used on Sgt. Pepper's and such. Everything was a big big deal to us, and it was all very overpowering and funny the way it was. It would actually take the wind out of our sails, and also even gone down to sort of London for the first time and gone into the marble arch offices of Arista Records, you know, and you come down out the sleeper, the train, and you go in, and there's these gold discs. We thought they were real gold. Of Barry Manilow and James Last, and you just feel so insignificant. If you talk about sort of funny things, and they said you're going to make a video for Chelsea Girl, and we said, yeah, we're going to make a video. Kind of, what's a video? And someone said, a video is, it's one of those things, you know, Queen did one for Bohemian Rhapsody. You all stand the back of each other in a line and sing. And we just didn't know what any of that stuff was.
Reel-to-Reel Cacophony was Simple Minds' second album. They were determined to be more experimental and composed all the songs in the studio. With producer John Leckie, they created one of the most musically controversial LPs of the 80s.
We went to Rockfield to work on this record called Reel-to-Reel, that the only thing we had was sounds and atmospheres. The record company had asked for demo tapes, and they let us go in, and I think couldn't believe what they got back. They got back a record that they had essentially no chance of getting on radio. There was no Chelsea Girl Mark IIs or such. But they did get a record that got much better reviews than the first one did, and a record that was getting accepted in a sort of a specialised level.
One of the many tracks on the album which puzzled listeners was the instrumental Velt.
Velt was us questioning how you write a song and what a song is beyond music. And really we were writing a film music. We wanted to write a visual music, something where you could close your eyes and see the music, but still make it musical and not into sound effects, although we did use sound effects. Velt was again started from a bass line, and slowly we could hear things going on, like if you put reverb on an instrument, or you put some crazy effect on the bass. Out of the effect comes other harmonics, other music, other melodies are heard. You know, that's how that happened.
Bruce and I were shocked the first time we heard Reel-to-Reel. I hadn't been to any of the recordings. I'd been to a lot of the recordings of the first LP, but I wasn't at any of the recordings for the second LP. So I was really, really surprised when I heard it, quite taken aback, because it was so different to how I expected it. A couple of the tracks they played live, but the majority of it had never been heard out with the band before. And we were a bit unsure to start off with. Played it a few times, talked to the band about it, and gradually the strength of the album came through. And it didn't get terribly good reviews at all from anybody, if I remember rightly. But Paul Morley did list it as one of his favourite albums of that year. And it was at that point that people began to think, well, maybe there's something in Simple Minds after all.
Brian Hogg's reaction to Reel-to-Reel Cacophony typified the response to the album. Simple Minds record company were dismayed at their avant-garde approach, but John Leckie was convinced that at least two songs, Changeling and Premonition, took them in a new direction.
Changeling, all we had when we started there, I don't know if it was Derek's bass riff or Charlie's guitar, we just had the riff, that was the riff, and that's all that we had. We worked out a drum part to go with it, although the drums are all just the same all the way through, and we worked out a middle and an ending. The riff is pretty insistent all through the song, and it's built up with I think there's bass synth, bass guitar, which just provides a real solid thing underneath. At the end, down in the club, is Jim impersonating Iggy Pop. They like that.